Alright, try and be careful not to remove the bottom case from the servo. It does have an O-ring in there, and the O-rings are kind of a pain to put back on. Generally these will be stuck on there pretty good, so you typically don't have to worry about that. Center case, this is of course without anything in it. That's where the potentiometer goes, motor sits there. This is the top case. They do not come with new servo badges. You will have to remove your old servo badge if you want it on there. Just some rubber cement is all you need. You don't want to use CA or epoxy. Just creates a mess. It's not needed. Foam tack, a little small, tiny dab. You only need a little bit on there to get the job done. Again, use something rubbery or silicone based. 3 new O-rings. We only need to use 2 because, as I mentioned before, the bottom case we will not be replacing, and it already has one in there. 2 new top case screws. If you notice, they do have O-rings on them already. This is the output shaft O-ring, which I will be replacing because it's cheap insurance. Not that it's critical, but comes with it. Why not do it? And then 4 brand new case screws. So you really don't have to use any of your old case components here. You can use all the new stuff except for the bottom case. Okay, potentiometer reinstalled into the new bottom case. You will need to reuse the screw. You might be able to see that I did put the O-ring in its track. There is a molded recess here where the O-ring slips in. You can kind of see it there. Same thing on the other side too. The O-rings are kind of a pain to do. No real good way to put them in. Just have some patience. I've got big fingers and that doesn't help. But have some patience. Maybe have a little small Phillips head screwdriver like this. This one kind of got twisted up years ago, and it actually kind of works really good for this because it can hook onto the O-ring a little bit. And then once you get that in there, potentiometer, the O-ring in, potentiometer only goes one way, wires towards the middle. I haven't seen anybody put it in backwards, but you don't want to do that. Just kind of push it on. It's going to be a little bit of a tight fit because it's a brand new case. Don't worry if there's a little gap when you put the screws in, it'll pull all that shut. Okay, these 2 are in, these 2 gears, the primary MPD gear, secondary with its own center shaft. Center shafts can be a little bit of a tight fit on a brand new case, so just use like the back end of your screwdriver and just give them a gentle tap to get them to seat down all the way. These 2 last gears can be a little bit tricky to put in. I don't really have a good tip other than, see if I can see this. You can kind of see the orientation of the potentiometer here. Try and make it such that it's like that, because that potentiometer does key into the bottom of the gear here. See if I can get my camera to focus. And maybe it won't. Well, you can kind of see the keyway in there. That keys directly onto the potentiometer. Alright. Little cheat. See this pin right here? This pin right here on the side of the gear goes on the top and the bottom. This is actually the stop inside the servo. This is what keeps it from over rotating. It has an interference fit with the bottom of the case. See if I can show you that here. This is a stop on one side and this is the stop on the other. So that pin actually slides inside of this groove here. That's what keeps it from rotating. That pin, as I was saying, is the cheat, because that'll let you get it lined in there perfectly with the potentiometer, because this is always in line with the potentiometer. So I set the potentiometer lengthwise this way. So we set that pin in there just like that. Want to put your new O-ring on. The output shaft here just goes on top. These O-rings, they do not make the servo waterproof. They just make it dust resistant. They help keep the dust out of the gear train. So don't think that just because it has O-rings that you can go and drive it into a lake and expect it to survive. Water damage is something that will instantly void your warranty. We do not warranty water damage, so just keep that in mind. At this point, really the only thing you got to do is put the screws back in the top and the bottom. Again, new screws are provided. This O-ring is not used. Keep it in your spare parts bin. This little gap in between the top case and the bottom case that you can see right there, you can see some blue right through it. That'll get pulled tight once you put the screws in. Don't crank the screws down. These are not a torque. There's no torque setting for these. These are just a regular old screw that's going to bite into plastic. Just tighten them down until the gap goes away. Snug them down basically, and that's pretty much all you got to do. Alright, at this point you're pretty much ready to go. Just reassemble the servo. You can put the badge top on again if you want. Put your grommets on, put it back in the airplane. You might actually want to test it real quick, just make sure it's free. Make sure there's no binding. Again, do not crank these case screws down. You do not want these super tight because it can actually crack the bottom case. It can strip out inside your new top case, or it could potentially warp part of the case, which would lead to premature wear and tear. If you did this right, I'm pretty much 100% confident I've done it right because I've done it so many times. These should be good to go for about another 400 flights or so. Maybe a little less if you fly a little hard. If you're hell-bent on putting the new badge on, I'm not going to bother. It's no point to me. I know what they are. Take a sharp number 11 blade, or even a medium sharpness like this one, as long as there's a good point at the tip of it. And you can kind of wedge it in between the case and the badge. Just kind of gently work it up. You can see how it kind of lifted up there. See how it's lifting up? And just slowly work your blade underneath and cut through the rubber cement that's underneath. That's all these are held on with. Again, just use a dab of rubber cement or some foam tack. Do not use a hard glue like CA or epoxy. Just a tiny dab will do ya. Put it on there, let it dry, good to go.